maybe a surprise, or it's becoming a trend, or it's becoming a law, I think that's when things really start to get ugly. And that's when you have to have like a real heart-to-heart conversation of, hey, what we never wanted to be normal is now normal. And I'm scared that this is becoming normal.
Boundaries are a way to honor a core value or honor a goal. You say you want to be in shape. Are you honoring the boundary of going to the gym once a day or 5 times a week or 4 times a week or whatever it is?
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was episode number 1336, Are Your Own Timelines Holding You Back? Today, for episode number 1337, the 2 types of boundaries. I got a really thoughtful question from somebody the other day. This person is an entrepreneur, but this doesn't necessarily have to do with being an entrepreneur. They said, at the beginning of your relationship with Taryn, how did you guys talk about the expectations and the boundaries around your work and how often you travel and all that stuff? And I was like, interesting. I don't know if I really knew what the hell I was doing at the beginning of our relationship when all of this came up. I was just trying to do the best I could with what I knew. So I said, this is what I did. We sat down and I said, okay, what are your boundaries around me traveling? Like, what are your expectations? What are your no-fly zones? What are not going to be allowed, for lack of better phrasing? And we had an open and honest conversation about that. And we came up with, I will not travel any more than 1 week out of the month. Right? Like, because at the time, this was pre-COVID, not everything was virtual like it is today. I was having fears around, like, I don't know, a lot of these speakers and stuff, they're all over the place. Like, they're on the road all the time. I don't know if that's even sustainable. So we had this talk. And I realized when I was giving this person advice, there's really 2 kinds of boundaries. There is a hard boundary. I wanted to use concrete and rubber. Alan was like, no. So I'm not going to. There's hard boundaries and there's soft boundaries. And if you were to, I had this come to me when we were talking about it, on the opposite of that, it's almost like there are also super necessary and not as super necessary.
In other words,
I haven't thought of it clearly.
Concrete and rubber-ish.
So it's almost like 100% necessities. Okay, how about this? Necessities and preferences. Wow.
Right.
Wow. Pretty creative right off the top of my head. So 2 types of boundaries, hard and soft. A hard boundary might be, for me, if you are traveling for more than 1 week out of the month for repeated months, I don't want to do it. That's a hard boundary. I want you home. If we're going to have children, maybe that was the talk at the time, I want to make sure you're here. I don't want to date or marry someone who's gone half the month. I want more than that. Okay, that might be a hard boundary. A soft boundary might be, I'd like you to be done by work every single day by 6:30, right? Because babe, I can't promise that. I can't promise that's going to happen. I mean, I would like for that to happen. I'm sure there's going to be times where it doesn't happen. So that's almost kind of the necessities as well. So I guess the necessities and the boundaries are very connected, because one's kind of like I wouldn't like it to go past this. The other one's like, I would like it to be this. That's the best I can do.
We've done an episode about this, I think, on Conscious Couples, where it was musts, must-nots, and then negotiables. It's kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
Musts, must-nots, and negotiables. So must not smoke cigarettes was one of Emilia's. Must would be a monogamous relationship. Negotiables would be whether or not we do the dishes at night or in the morning. That kind of thing. But the cool thing about this is clarity around it provides automatically just less debates and arguments and frustrations.
Even that question of like, what was the conversation like at the beginning? It's like, I don't know how much I understood how important that question was, and how important even just Tara and I sitting down in the beginning and just saying, what are your hard no's? Like, if I did them, it would not wreck the relationship, but it would really make you doubt the relationship. And every single thing I've done in terms of travel, I don't travel that often. I travel for very rare occasions, and it's not, I would never want to do like back-to-backs, but think of it this way. When you and I, and here's why sometimes your hard boundaries become somewhat flexible. Alan and I flew out to Wisconsin, and we were only supposed to be there for 2 days, 3 days.
Yep.
We were supposed to fly home to Massachusetts and then drive to Toronto a week later, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll probably remember the details better than I in terms of the days. But we ended up staying in Wisconsin an extra day, driving from Wisconsin to Toronto.
Well, our flight was canceled.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we had to stay.
Pivot.
And
we
then
had to
after
pivot.
that, it was like, why are we... Because then it was the next closest flight was 2 days later. And it was like, why would we fly home to then drive to Toronto 2 days after that? You know, it was just cheaper and more convenient to just... Even though that kind of sucked.
It did suck. It was brutal. But Emilia and Taryn had the same thought. Emilia texted you and Taryn texted me and said, hey, is it even worth you coming home? So she quite literally was so flexible in a hard boundary that she suggested I'm actually going to be gone for more than a week, but she wasn't thinking of that. Mm-hmm. So that was really the goal of this episode, is to understand, one, I think some of your boundaries should be hard boundaries. Like maybe smoking cigarettes. Like, that's probably, if that's a hard boundary, there's nothing wrong with that staying a hard boundary. But if I went to Taryn and said, hey, Google wants to bring us in to talk about podcasting and they're going to pay us $1 million, but I'm going to be gone all next month. She might say, $1 million. Yeah, okay. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. It's not that big of a deal.
Make another shot.
Yeah. So I just think that it's one of those things where, when you start something, I guess in this example, we're talking about a relationship, you might have your path kind of charted out. We're going to go down here. We're going to go this way. This is how long it's going to take, all that. You might have a conversation later where it's like, hey, things have changed. This is a different opportunity, right? I got a lot of grace from Taryn, and I know Emilia gave you a lot of grace when we were prepping for Next Level Live. I worked till like 10 o'clock very often. But it was one of those, hey, I know this is some sort of boundary. How do you and I have the flexibility and understanding that this is a very rare thing, but it is what's best for me? How do we, not asking for permission, but asking for grace? How do we communicate that right now, where I know this is a big deal, but also what I'm doing is a big deal too? So can we kind of drive to 5?
And it's not just for me, but it's for it's for the relationship too, right? Because everything you're doing isn't just for you, right? Yeah. The business becomes more successful. Obviously, Taryn will benefit in some ways from that too. And I think that's the frame, is at the end of the day, when you are flexing a hard boundary because things have changed over time, is it what you and your partner now agree is optimal now based on the things that have changed? And are you having that check-in ahead of time, or are you just letting it kind of slide? And I think that's a good frame to look from.
Have you had boundaries like shift? Hard boundaries turn into soft or flexible? Would you share them? Or you will?
Yeah. Kevin challenged me. Well, I challenged myself and then he agreed, but we're doing this a little bit more conversational. I don't have my notes in front of me.
I like it.
So
I like it.
Yeah, I think it's good. We're going back a little bit. It's good. Not in a bad way. An evolved new version. What is an example of a boundary that has shifted with Emilia and I? I would say one of them would be Sundays were supposed to be no work Sundays for a while there, and then that wasn't working. And so now it's like a third of it is back office work. That would be another one that flexed for sure. I mean, there's a whole bunch, man. I remember she wanted to do the dishes at night. I didn't want to. I wanted to do them in the morning. There's been a bunch of those.
You are kitchen man after all.
I am kitchen man.
Same.
Yeah. And kitchen man likes to do it in between a call or something. And when you have back-to-backs all day, sometimes kitchen man doesn't do it.
I know.
And has to ask. And that's, we're sometimes I'll be like, sweetheart, can you kitchen woman today? Because kitchen man needs a minute,
Yeah.
But even those are the pivots. Emilia, here's another one. Sorry to interrupt you.
Good.
So last week, 2 weeks ago, Evolve Ventures did their first group coaching program 2 weeks ago, I think. And I understand, like, fill the group, the onboarding process, getting the session set up, Zoom links, it's a whole thing. And I was like, okay, you're going to need Grace this week. And so I'll take care of Tucker and Tariel. So our dog and our cat, we have a schedule. We have 4 times when we take them out. So morning and evening is usually my shift. She takes the afternoon and the early evening. So I did all 4 shifts for that week, and then we pivoted back. And the transition back was a little tough because I think she's kind of doing my shifts now. But those kinds of things, you got to be on a team with it, and you got to be flexible. I think of a palm tree.
Go on.
Super strong. Okay. But it flexes in the wind. So it doesn't snap.
Is that the first time you've ever said that? You just come with that real quick?
That's the first time I've ever said it. I heard it on Instagram.
Okay. See?
you know.
I heard
first
it on
Instagram. It's a good analogy, though.
You don't know anything about trees. I know you know redwood. I know you know redwood and birch.
You know that.
I don't know if it's interesting. It's
redwood, birch, palm tree. That's it. That's the extent of it.
We did an episode on this a while ago, and Taryn and I rechecked in with this recently, but it was a relationship agreement. And this is what you're doing. You're setting expectations and you're kind of creating boundaries. So same, one of the things is the dishes will be done at night before we go to bed. Not always. Last night, yesterday as of the day of recording this, but I woke up at 1:55 in the morning. And for some reason it was like,
classic.
Well, yeah, we're not going back to bed. I'm just tossing and turning. I'm rolling. I can't go back to sleep. So I just got up and I came into the office at 2:00 in the morning and got after it. Got a lot of work done. It was great. Then.
No wonder why you slept in today. You got a 91 sleep score.
Yeah, 92.
Strong work.
I needed it.
92?
I needed it. Yeah. Yeah.
91 sleep score on the Oura Ring is excellent.
It's world class.
Anything in the 90s, you're going to feel like $1 million for like a day and a half.
Well, we'll find out tomorrow at this time. So then Pops came over. Pop. As Taryn's dad is considered by the cats. And he came over at 6. And I told Taryn, I finished work. I went out and I was like, all right, what do you need to do? Like, what do you need help with? And she's like, well, maybe you could like clean the bathroom or whatever. And I was like, yeah, no, I'll do it. She's like, are you okay? And I was like, I feel terrible. I feel like the worst. I'm so tired. I have the worst headache. I can't formulate thoughts. I mean, I'm running on 3.5 hours of sleep and I've worked 17 hours. So like, I don't feel right. Definitely. So she was like, well, why don't you just
I'm going to need to push the dishes boundary.
Yeah. So she said, why don't you just go lay down on the couch and watch TV? And I was like, I can't. I want to help you. Like, I feel bad if I don't help you. She's like, I'm telling you, what if I asked you if you'd go sit down on the couch? And I was like, well, that would probably help me. So she ended up cleaning the bathroom. And then last night, normally I would do the dishes because she cooked a bunch. Obviously, I'm not going to do them because I went to bed at 7:00 in the afternoon. So I think it is kind of one of those things where there's always the undertone of expectations, but there is the respect for change. I think that's a really good way to put it. Like,
definitely.
What's going on, guys? My name is Austin, and I've been working with Kevin for a few months now. If there's one thing that I find super valuable is his expertise on how to position the podcast to the right audience and fit the content into the overall business plan. And frankly, when we work together, he challenges me a lot. There were some tough conversations that he initiated with me so that I can really grow in the business. Besides the coaching part, the editing team does amazing work with editing and show notes and staying on top of all communications. Overall, my experience working with Kevin has really been top-notch.
We did the episode many moons ago where there's the anomaly pattern. No, what was it? Anomaly, trend, something. Oh, anomaly, surprise, trend, law. So an anomaly is when something happens rarely. So like, I'm very rarely late. If I'm late to a meeting, it's an anomaly, usually.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What was the second one I said? Surprise. Surprise.
Surprise. Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah.
It might be a surprise for Alan to be 10 minutes early to a meeting.
Oh, definitely. Of course.
Right? Trend is...
AKA never.
Well, then that would be an anomaly, so it's hard to explain in this. But
yeah.
a trend might be something that's happening more often. So I start showing up late. Like, Kev, you've been late 3 times in the last couple weeks. Like, that's a trend. And then a law is something that happens.
It's becoming a trend, yeah.
Becoming a trend. And then a law is something that always happens.
Always, yeah.
So it's
like
almost
gravity.
like gravity. It's almost the opposite of an anomaly, in a way, in this kind of system. So if you think about it, if you have a running understanding of my boundary shifts based on where this falls on that, if it's something that's an anomaly and it's like, hey, I'm going to be behind, I'm going to miss family dinner. Your boundary is probably going to be flexible if it's something that very, very, very rarely happens. But if somebody is breaking a hard boundary on repeat and it's becoming like maybe a surprise, or it's becoming a trend, or it's becoming a law, I think that's when things really start to get ugly. And that's when you have to have like a real heart-to-heart conversation of, hey, what we never wanted to be normal is now normal. And I'm scared that this is becoming normal.
Well, one example of a hard boundary in relationships, particularly intimate relationships, but all relationships, is dishonesty. Being dishonest, lying to someone is almost always crossing a hard boundary. We did a Relationship Talks event last night, and the 3 biggest risks to your relationship were, number 1 was arrogance, number 2 was dishonesty, and number 3 was immaturity. And the hard boundary of being dishonest, if you get caught in a lie or you accidentally lie or whatever, if that starts to become a trend, eventually the relationship loses trust. And when the relationship loses trust, the people stop believing in it as much. And when you stop believing in it as much, you stop investing in it as much. And then when you stop investing in it as much, it gets worse. And then you believe in it even less. And it becomes this really downward spiral thing. And so at very least, you need to know your soft and hard boundaries within yourself. And one more tiny example too. So Emilia and I, we try to do 10 to 6. We end up doing 11 to 7 most of the time. And so 10 to 6 is a target. I always tell her, I need to know the target. I know I'm never going to hit the target perfectly. I'm not going to hit the bullseye, right? So if we try to go to bed at 10 p.m. tonight on a Friday night, I'm not going to go to bed at 10 p.m. I'm probably going to hit either 9:45 because I conk out, or 9 o'clock because I conk out early because I'm so exhausted because I was up early, or I'm going to end up at like 11:15 or whatever.
2 o'clock.
So there's a 2 o'clock in the morning. There's a percent error, plus or minus however much percent. And that's what I'm always saying is like, what's the target here? We're going for 10? Okay, we might end up at 10:30 or 11, or we might end up at 9:30 or 9. And that's helpful as well. But here's what happens in relationships. Someone else changes the target. And this is one more piece. Kev, when you change your goal, the boundaries have to change. Boundaries are a byproduct of core values and goals. So if all of a sudden you grew and changed and evolved, and you're like, you know what, honestly, I actually didn't realize this, but I'm really loving this sales process and getting more clients and growing the business more than I thought I would. I want to do more of that, and I want to hit this goal. Now, all of a sudden, those boundaries of when you work might have to get wider. Or, you know what, honestly, I don't want to keep grinding like this. This isn't fulfilling me. Now you have to hone the boundaries a little more. Meaning, like, I need to be off by 6.
Oh,
and so
did.
Next, what'd you say?
That's something we did. It was like, hey, man, a lot of that was more my relationship than anything. Like, hey, I'm, this 7:30, 8 o'clock thing here, not good. It's not good for me and my family. That was a hard conversation, but it was this is all that happened. We never really, Tara and I never really had a boundary around that.
Yeah.
And then it just kept expanding because it was like, oh, no, yeah, everything's whatever. It is what it is. And then it was like, hey, am I ever going to see you during the week? And it was like, oh, we've gone way too far, haven't we? Okay. Interesting. Let's
especially
figure
with
out.
Next Level Live.
Yeah, definitely.
And so what happened is Next Level Live that month was brutal.
Yeah.
And Kevin and I were working really late, starting really early. And after that, so what we had to do for Next Level Live, and this is for the listeners, we had to open the boundaries of when we were working for that month. And then we worked more. Emilia and Taryn gave us tons of grace. Then after that, we had to close them to compensate. And it was like, okay, listen, we cannot. And we did group coaching right after Next Level Live. And I remember it was like, oh, like, how do we do this without working late?
Well, we don't. That's the answer. That's pretty much the answer. But
unfortunately, yes. But we're making up for it now.
Yeah, and I think it is. It's always that. This is what I would say. Ask if you're in a relationship. If you're in a intimate relationship, ask what are your hard boundaries? What are your soft boundaries? And which ones do we share? Do we share the same ones? Do we not share the same ones? Just have that question or have that conversation. If you're riding solo and you're not in a relationship, it's still important for you to ask, okay, what are my own self boundaries when it comes to other people? When I leave something and I feel a certain way, is that because when I was in that situation, those people broke hard boundaries that I didn't realize I set, right? I think it's, again, at the end of the day, it's your job to set boundaries and keep them because nobody else can keep boundaries they don't know you have.
Boundaries, Emilia said this, not me. Boundaries are a way to honor a core value or honor a goal. You say you want to be in shape. Are you honoring the boundary of going to the gym once a day or 5 times a week or 4 times a week or whatever it is? So boundaries are not a bad thing. Boundaries are honoring a core value or a goal. And the question is, some are hard and some are soft. If you have an Olympic gold medal competition coming up in 3 months, it's a hard boundary. You have to work out, and if not, and maybe it's post-competition, now all of a sudden it's a softer boundary. And then when it gets relationships, then it's more challenging because so Kevin and I, business partners, I need to know his hard boundaries. I need to know his soft boundaries. I need to know my hard boundaries and my soft boundaries, and they evolve as we do. And as our goals get bigger and the demands on our time and effort become larger, now we have to recheck in on it. Otherwise, it's going to go off the rails, just like guardrails on a highway.
Yeah, it's almost like tug of war, except there's no, you don't have a wall. You can just keep going, but I have a wall on one side. I can only pull you so far. You can pull me as far as you want, except you wouldn't. I'd destroy you at tug of war.
Well...
I'm just kidding.
Not lately.
What do you mean lately? I might. Oh, no, yeah. In this,
yeah.
No. I've been losing that tug of war battle, but I will reclaim it.
You've been losing the drive to 5.
I will reclaim
which we
it.
have to rectify, for sure.
We're in the process of. Next Level Nation, our next meetup. If you want to see Alan and I behind the scenes, if you want to meet other members of the community, if you want a deeper dive into what we talk about on this podcast, join us for our next monthly meetup, which is how to stick with something for the long run. I get asked very often, how did you guys get to 1,337 episodes? And I said, we just woke up and that's how many we had. That's what we'll be teaching. No. I said we have been sticking with it for the long run. It's in the very beginning, we didn't expect to make it right away. And we kept getting a little bit better and a little bit better. And we have habits and we have the right level of necessity and we have the right level of accountability. So we will be talking about that in our next monthly meetup, June 1st, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Also, we have a community. So in the Relationship Talks event last night, what we talked about was the purpose of an intimate relationship. If the purpose is growth, then every challenge all of a sudden is a good thing because every challenge is an opportunity to grow. Next Level Nation, the purpose is community and growth. It's a safe place to grow. It's a safe place to be who you are. It's a safe place to grow into who you are and to be imperfect along the way. You will never be disrespected in there. You will always be supported in there. And that is the purpose of Next Level Nation. So I hope you join us. It's a private Facebook group. The link will be in the show notes.
Tomorrow for episode number 1338, you get more of what you focus on. I had a realization from working with so many very successful clients. A lot of our podcast clients are very successful. They're investors and business people. So I had an awareness by working with them for so long that I want to share. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We'll talk to you all tomorrow.
Keep setting those boundaries. Next Level Nation.